Peace. This is Jamal Robinson, 720astrology.com. On March 8th, 2023, Saturn made its ingress into Pisces. This is a big deal because Saturn is one of the slower moving planets, and its transit in a sign can last 2 to 3 years. So it was in the sign of Aquarius from 2020 until just recently in 2023. Let's look at 10 things that we may see while Saturn makes its transit through the sign of Pisces from 2023 to 2026. But before we get into that, just something to consider. When you're studying transits, one of the simplest ways to go about it, to get some measure of how it will express, is to look back into the past. So we had a Saturn transit in Pisces during the Great Depression, 1935 to 1938. We had a Saturn transit from 1964 to 67, and it transited Pisces, I want to say from 93 to 96. And so one of the fortunes of having all these gray hairs is that I have vivid memory of the last time Saturn was in Pisces, because it was my senior years of high school. And I remember what all transpired at that time, and it gives me a unique and individual perspective because we all live out these transits individually. So it gives me something to reflect back on personally. And from a microcosmic level or a macrocosmic level, we can look at what was going on in the world back then to help further give context. So just wanted to add that in before we get into these 10 things, because it really does help with understanding and getting a feel for transits. So, number 1, prosperity out of fantasy. Now, that was an actual title of an article published May 2nd, 1938 in New York Times. And it's in reference to the Disney Corporation. So, in 38, when it was published, which is right after Saturn finished its transit in Pisces. It transited Pisces from 35 to 38. Now, I'm going to do another video where I look specifically at Disney and Walt Disney and how Disney was solidified as a giant during this time frame, with the Great Depression and things, chaos going on in the world, in the United States. And ironically, this is when Disney is taking off. So, but for the sake of the conversation here, prosperity out of fantasy. Fantasy is a word that can be associated with Pisces. Prosperity associated with Saturn. Saturn as the natural ruler of Capricorn, and its association with the 10th house and the 11th as the traditional ruler of Aquarius, these are concepts that are 10th and 11th house centered, or it is a concept that is 10th and 11th house centered. Prosperity. Prosperity is deals with achievement, status. It's also, what am I able to attain based on my level of status? So, what or who does that put me in association with? These are things that deal with the 10th and 11th houses, as they are related to Capricorn and Aquarius. So, prosperity out of fantasy. Putting all the conspiratorial things to the side, one thing we can get out of this rise of Disney during this calamitous time in the country and the world is that it shows the power of magic. And that's one of those key things associated with Disney as well. Magic. And magic is very Piscean. Imagination. That magic is in that word, imagination, magi, visualization, otherworldliness. It's a reminder that although chaos may be unfolding, we still have an opportunity to have some say and creation in the life we desire. Number 2, corporate/government sponsored insanity. Yeah. That's one of the unfortunate possibilities with Saturn, which is government. It's also associated with corporations. Insanity, Pisces. Pisces is associated with insane asylums. Why would that even be a potential happening? Well, there is much to be gained for certain folk by unraveling and untethering people's connection to sanity. If people become insane, you can push through a lot of things that otherwise may not be accepted or tolerated, because corporate sponsored insanity can create a need for more stringent policies, laws, rules, and persecution. An example of the attempt towards insanity would be what recently emerged on the internet, the deep fake pictures of the former president, Donald Trump. Though that's a warning sign. That's a warning sign of what is to come. That things will be put out and they will seem to be so real that one will have to question what is reality. And as you move more through a world where you don't know what's real, then that shakes up one's foundation, especially if one didn't have a solid foundation to begin with. And that feeds the unfortunate outcome of insanity. So it's something to keep an eye on. 3, legalization of narcotics. Saturn is the law enforcer. It is the as previously stated, it's associated with government. So, and from government, we receive our laws, and our laws are enforced. Legalization of anything would fall under government. Narcotics associated with Pisces. Why? Because when one is under the influence, one seems to move away from oneself and fuse with something or several things beyond the three-dimensional self. This can be positive and negative. But when we think about legalization of narcotics, we already see the potential towards this with information coming out of, I think Portland, Oregon is where they're doing a test run with, if not all narcotics, there are at least a few that they have temporarily lifted bans on or legalized. And question is why? Now, I'm sure there's some type of what appears to be logical explanation, but I tend to think it's something more than just an attempt towards some form of harmony or balance. I tend to think it's the opposite, and it's something to keep an eye on that we may see grow as far as beyond just that city, throughout the state, or become a regional thing, or very well a national thing. Legalization of narcotics. Number 4, organized fear mongering. Organization is a word that can be associated with Saturn, as in an overarching organization. Not Virgo would be more of organizing, the act of organizing, but an organization, that's Saturn, as it's related to Capricorn. An umbrella, an overarching something. So organized fear mongering, meaning fear mongering coming from the top, as an edict or as a designed happening, and it ties in with the corporate sponsored insanity. The fear mongering as an extension of the corporate sponsored insanity, the fear mongering will serve as a means to freeze, because fear causes it causes temporary paralysis and stasis. Okay, so if by chance humanity is scheduled to evolve into its next paradigm, fear could very well be used to enable or prevent this natural evolutionary journey. So that's something to keep an eye on. 5, banks dissolving. We already see that happening, but from a symbolic perspective as it relates to astrology, Saturn, Capricorn, deals with banks. The bank is the edge or the limit of the waterway. Saturn sets limits. Currency, water. Currency in essence is flowing energy. So banks dissolving, meaning there being a flood of sorts. And that flood of sorts represents the devaluation of value or devaluation of currency, which would lead to number 6, imaginary currency. And we already see evidence of that with pick one. And there's all the controversy around certain forms of these new digital currency, and but we can expect to see that increase, and we could very well be on a new system by 2026. Number 7, changes in state/nation boundaries or borders. This goes back to the thing with the banks and currency, because it's tying into the idea of Saturn setting limits. A border will set a limit for a particular landmass, let you know this belongs to this group, and on the other side of this line it belongs to that group. This line sets a boundary. Okay, well, because Pisces is mutable water, we could see boundaries start to, the boundary lines start to blur. And that could play out in several ways. That could play out with literal immigration. That could play out within the country, as in states, maybe states, certain states merging with others, maybe new territory lines are drawn. We'll have to see, but there's a possibility that we can see some changes in borders and boundaries from now to 2026. Number 8, uptick in propagandized movies. The word propaganda was invented by the Roman Catholic Church, and the word was created to carry out what its meaning states, to alter the behavior and thoughts of people through certain targeted messages, which can be subliminal, that target the subconscious mind to help cause a desired shift in consciousness. So we could very well see movies which are associated with Pisces, propagandized certain, and which it already happens, but we may see an uptick to where it just becomes more obvious that this is just straight up propaganda. Number 9, old traditions dissolve. Saturn and Capricorn, tradition dissolved, Pisces. So while there will very well be efforts to prevent the continued evolution of humanity, there will be naturally a dissolving energy that is breaking down old barriers. 10, increased importance of epigenetics. Because Pisces is mutable water, and it serves as the pool where what was once individualized energy is now undifferentiated. There's this fusion where there's no particular I. It's just everything is everything. Because of that energy, it puts a greater emphasis on understanding epigenetics. Epi, above, genetics, the genes, or above your individual blueprint, meaning greater importance and significance of the environment. What environment are you in? what type of environment are you creating with your energy? So Saturn in Pisces will place more emphasis on people putting themselves in the right type of environment, enclosing themselves in the right type of environment, one that fosters the type of energy they desire to foster, and one whose health will depend on the type of energy they put out into that environment. So just some things to think about as Saturn transits through Pisces from 2023 to 2026. As always, I'm available for private readings. If you want to see how this transit may unfold for you specifically, you can visit my website, 720astrology.com, and learn more about what I do. Thank you. Peace.